Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod Science classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to see current affairs of 14th October 2021. In this lecture, we are going to see 6 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So let's get started with our discussion and let us see list of the topics. So first one, it is about urban job scheme. So actually Tamil Nadu state government which is going to implement this urban job scheme. So this will be important from our governance point of view. As you all know, we have this rural employment guarantee scheme, that is MG Narega, right? So this MG Narega played an important role in this, especially COVID-19 pandemic period. So in the same lines, if we want to, or if we are going for this urban employment guarantee scheme, means this will be very helpful in this especially crisis situation. So now we are going to discuss about what is this urban scheme job in Tamil Nadu state and what is the significance and why we need this type of schemes. And next topic is about new Sainik schools. So here you need to know about what is this Sainik schools and which department under which this Sainik schools mainly comes, and also some facts regarding the Sainik schools. This will be important from our education because we can't predict UPSC. And next one is India's trade with China set to exceed $100 billion in 2021. Why I selected this topic between that is trade between India and China here is, so if you are writing about relationship between India and China, that is bilateral relationship. So this year India and China relationship, it is highly in use because of military standoff. So this year 2021 you can expect mains question regarding this India-China relations in your mains. So whenever you are writing answer regarding that India-China bilateral relations, you can also use this article as a one side heading like trade between India and China. So this will be important from your economy and even international relations point of view. And next topic is about climate financing. So here this article, it is very important because we are going to have this COP26 meeting, right? So in this meeting we need to also talk about this climate financing. So this will be important from our environment and ecology, which comes under GS paper 3. And next topic is about agri-food systems. So here in this COVID-19 pandemic, so most of the schools had been shut down. So because of this shutdown of schools here, midday meals program which mainly affected. So through this midday meals program, as it actually children, they used to get food, okay, hot cooked food, and they will be also getting one boiled egg. So because of this, it mainly helped to fight against this malnutrition. But now due to disruption of this midday meals program, so there are some reports which mainly saying that there is increasing of malnutrition in children. Mainly to fight that, we need to focus on this agri-food systems. So this topic is very important from our health point of view, which mainly comes under GS paper 2. And next topic is about industrial output and retail inflation. So actually in yesterday I gave you one article that you need to refer regarding this retail inflation. So now there is one editorial appeared in page number 6 regarding analysis of this topic. So we are going to discuss that. That will be important from our economy point of view. So now let us see first topic. Title says Tamil Nadu to implement this urban scheme job. So this article mainly focusing on this urban job scheme, okay, urban job scheme. So in rural areas we are having this MG Narega. MG Narega mainly played an important role in this COVID-19 pandemic. How? So as we all know, due to sudden abrupt imposition of lockdown in the country, so many migrants who migrated to cities in search of job, they started moving towards their hometowns. And we also studied number of times what are the plights which are mainly faced by these migrant people. Right after reaching their rural areas, they need to find a job mainly to sustain their life, right? So for proper livelihood opportunities, they started registering under this MG Narega scheme. And as we all know, this MG Narega, it is an employment guarantee scheme and it provided employment, okay, employment for 100 days usually. So under this, what happened, these migrant people, they got job and they completed the targets within a short period of time. So there was increase in the demand for this MG Narega that we saw in this during COVID-19 pandemic, especially lockdown period. So but if you are talking about these rural people, yes, they are getting jobs and they will be having some livelihood sustenance under this MG Narega. But what is the situation of this urban poor, urban slum dwellers? Okay, so for these people, so we need to provide job guarantee scheme, especially even in urban areas also. And we discussed number of times regarding this discussion and number of editorials regarding this urban job schemes. So now here Tamil Nadu state government came up with implementation of this urban job scheme. So now let us try to talk about this topic in a very great detail. So if you are talking about context, it mainly says that state government has issued orders to implement this Tamil Nadu urban employment scheme in 2 zones in Greater Chennai Corporation. So in Greater Chennai Corporation, state government issued orders to implement this Tamil Nadu urban employment scheme. And if you are talking about some more details, 1 zone each in 14 municipal corporations and 1 municipality and 7 other regions and 2 town panchayats. So they are mainly given under this job scheme, and it is mainly based on this pilot process during 2021 and 2022. So if they are getting good results in this pilot process, and they will go for implementing this. And if you are talking about some important details, it mainly says that so the scheme that mainly aims at improving livelihood and even social security, and it will also improve job opportunities, and also it will be helpful for even maintenance of public assets. So these are some important things. So first one is it will be helpful mainly for improving of livelihood of people, and it will provide some social security. It will also boost job opportunities, and also it will helpful in maintenance of public assets. So if you're talking about what is the need of this type of schemes, so if you're talking about needs, I can divide this need, or I can explain this need in under 2 subheadings. So first one is if you're talking about urban population, so we need to also take into consideration population of this urban people who mainly depended on daily wages. So unlike other states, the urban population in Tamil Nadu is growing very much fast. It would reach 60% of total population by 2036. So there are many estimates says that there is increasing of urban population in Tamil Nadu, and here it mainly says that by 2036 it will reach about 60% of total population. So you can understand here. So there is increasing of urban population, and this one is a total of 4 crore people. They were now living in urban areas. They accounting for 53% of total population. So total of about 4 crore people, they are now living in urban areas. They accounted for 53% of total population. So because of this, not only government should focus on this rural area scheme, but even urban areas also very important. Okay, and many of these people, they lost their job due to this COVID-19 pandemic. Now they are in verge of government help. And if you're talking about implementation and key features under the schemes, workers, they will be used for activities, for example desilting of water bodies, maintenance of public works and other places, etc. So here they will do mainly some important activities like desilting of water bodies. So what is this desilting? So if you're talking about any water body, for example let us take river which is moving in this direction. So whenever river which is moving, it will be having ability to bring lot amount of sediments. So for example, if you see whenever water is moving, it will also carry away some plastic bags, some I can say like litter, etc. Right? So in the same way, whenever it is carrying, that will be deposited, right? So for example, let us take this is the depth of this river initially, but due to whatever the sediments it is bringing, whenever there is deposition of these sediments, so it will becomes very narrow. So because of this, the water carrying capacity of this river will be decreased, and that will be leads to spelling will leads to floods. So whenever we are removing this, okay, this sediments here, this process is called as desilting. Desilting is very important to maintain ecological balance. So these are some important works that will be done under this urban job scheme. So now let us try to see next article. Title says 100 new Sainik schools will admit students from 2022 to 23. So from 2022 to 2023, 100 new Sainik schools will admit students. So it is talking about Sainik schools, and you can expect question from this Sainik schools in your prelims, not from mains actually. So if you're talking about context, it mainly says that 100 new Sainik schools, they are to be set under public-private partnership, and they will function in an exclusive vertical, distinct from the existing schools under this defense ministry. So here our government, it is going to come up with this 100 Sainik schools, and these 100 Sainik schools that will become under this public-private partnership. So we discussed number of times what is this public-private partnership, and it is a time to revise. So these schools mainly comes under which ministry? Defense ministry. Okay, Ministry of Defense it mainly comes under. So you have to remember this fact. And if you see, these admissions are mainly targeted from academic year 2022 to 2023. So these are the some important details revealed by our senior ministry official. So if you're talking about some important details, it mainly says that beginning from the pandemic, the beginning from this academic year 2020 to 2023, they are expecting that they are going to take approximately 5,000 students. So 5,000 students they expected to revise admission in class 6 in 100 such facilitated affiliated schools. And in the phase 1 here, 100 students they were proposed to be drawn from the states, NGOs and as well as private partners. So in this first phase, in this 100 schools, they are mainly going to draw students from states, NGOs and even private partners. And the cabinet had approved proposal for this launching of this 100 schools, and they are to be affiliated with this Sainik School Society. And if you are talking about at present, there are about 33 such Sainik schools are present, and capacity is just 3,000 students, especially in this class 6th. And this scheme also envisages to provide annual fee support of 50% of support to an upper limit of rupees 40,000 per annum. Okay, so these are the some important things that you need to remember. And now let us try to focus on some basic facts. So first one is, what are these Sainik schools? So these Sainik schools, they are system of schools that mainly established and managed by Sainik School Society. So which is a society that mainly managing these schools? That is Sainik School Society. So this Sainik School Society which mainly comes under Ministry of Defense. And these schools mainly started, or establishment of these schools was led by V.K. Krishna Menon in 1961. At the time he was Defense Minister of India. And if you are talking about why we need this type of Sainik schools, so first important reason here is, already we know that our officer cadre of our Indian military, they were very busy. And Sainik schools, they were especially established in order to rectify regional and class imbalance amongst officer cadre of Indian military. So especially this Indian military, when we want to rectify religion or regional and as well as caste imbalance or class imbalance among officers, so this type of schools will be very important. And this type of schools, they were opened especially to prepare children mentally and physically to enter National Defense Academy NDA. And recently we saw about this NDA, like it is in current affairs, because now in this NDA here women, they can also write this exam and they can also enter this NDA. And as well as Indian Naval Army, that is INA. So to enter into this NDA and INA, so children, they are mainly prepared mentally and physically as well. And if you're talking about who are going to run this Sainik schools, the Sainik schools, they are in association with respect to state governments, and even Ministry of Defense, it mainly looks after funding, and as well as serving officers, they will act as principals for this type of schools. And if you're talking about curriculum, they mainly follow CBSE. CBSE plus curriculum, it is mainly followed by this Sainik schools. So these are some important things that you need to remember. And now let us try to see next topic. Title says India's trade with China set to exceed $100 billion. Okay, so it is about India and China trade. So now let us try to see this topic. So India's trade with China is set to cross $100 billion mark for the first time. So for the first time in this 2020 year, trade between India and China, it is mainly setting to cross $100 billion. With shipments, they are hitting $40 billion after 3 quarters, and it almost 30% jump from this pre-pandemic levels. So if you are comparing the trade with India, between India and China, so it was very low. It is about so and so 60, or we can say like we can say like very less percentage. But now if you are comparing with that, there is 30% of increase in exports and imports when we are comparing with it of pre-pandemic levels. So if you are talking about some important details, it mainly says that data from China General Administration of Customs, I can say like GAC, I can put it like this, GAC, that is China's General Administration for Custom, which mainly showed that two-way trade jumped 49% in the first time, and first 9 months it is $690.37. Actually there is no need of remembering this dollar, how many dollars, etc., but you have to remember overall there is increasing of trade between India and China. And India imports from China, which mainly surged to $68.4 billion, but earlier it was just 51.7 billion. So here India's exports mainly rose 42.5% to $29.9 billion. So there is increasing of exports of India that is seen, and two-way trade was substantially higher when we are compared with this even pre-pandemic levels. So with bilateral trade up to 29.7%, which mainly compared with the same period in 2019, with India's import to 21.5% and exports to China up to 64%. So this article mainly says that there is increasing of trade between India and China for sure, and bilateral trade it is 20.7%, 20.7% when we are comparing with that of same period from 2019. So when we are comparing with 2019 and 2021, now there is increasing of exports and as well as imports. If you see some facts, the first one is India's biggest exports to China, they include iron ore, cotton and other raw material. So here this type of questions that can be framed in UPSC prelims. So which are the exports to China? That is from Indian side it is iron ore and as well as cotton. And this one is India's imports mechanical and as well as electrical machinery, they are in large quantities. So we are exporting mainly iron ore and as well as cotton, and we are importing mechanical and as well as electrical machinery here, and also we will get raw materials for our pharmaceutical industries from this China. And Chinese exports of mechanical and as well as electrical products, and even we are getting some pharmaceutical ingredients like raw materials, that is medicinal materials, that mainly grew robustically, that means highly. And medicine and medicinal material exports, they are more than doubled between these two countries. Okay, so this is about this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. It is about deconstructing climate finance. So this article mainly focusing on this climate finance, and this topic is absolutely and which is very important from your mains. And this topic is important from our environment and ecology. So here we are going to have this 26th COP Conference of Parties meeting in Glasgow. So because of this, now there are many media reports, they are mainly focusing about this climate finances. So now let us try to discuss this topic. So if you are talking about the context, we are going to have this 26th COP's COP meeting, that is Conference of Parties meeting in Glasgow. So here this 26th Conference of Parties of UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So media reports they have claimed that developed countries they are inching very much closer to target to provide $100 billion annually in this climate finance, especially that will be given to this developing countries, and the target here is 2025, but actually original target is 2020. So now we are going to have this Conference of Parties summit here. So because of this, now every media channel and media reports are mainly focusing on this climate financing. So this reports mainly says that these developed countries they are very much closer regarding their targets to provide $100 billion annually as a climate finance, especially for these developing countries, and target year originally is 2020, but now it changed to 2025. So if you're talking about this topic in a deeper, or if you're digging deeper into this topic, so this view mainly boosted by this OECD, that is Organization for Economic Cooperation. So here this OECD mainly claimed that climate finance provided by the developed countries that reached 78.9 billion, okay, 78.9 billion in year 2018. So these are some flawed claims. So now let us try to see why they are flawed claims. So if you see, firstly, OECD figures includes mainly public, private finance and as well as export credits. Actually, the developed countries they need to give some funding to developing countries, right? So it should be from public finance, but here it also includes private finance and as well as export credits. So developing countries they have insisted that developed country climate finance should be from public sources, and it should be provided as grants and as well as concessional loans. But here OECD report mainly clearly says that so public finance component it is $62.2 billion in 2018. So it came up with bilateral funding of 32.7 billion, and here 29.2 out of this 62 also, here 32.7 billion that is mainly from bilateral funding, and 29.2 billion dollars that is through multilateral institutions. So of public finance components, here loans mainly comprise of 74% and grants will make up only 24%. And if you see between the year 2013 to 2018, the share of loan has continued to rise here. But here grants had been decreased. Okay, loans means we need to repay, but grants we can't repay, right? So here grants are decreasing, but loans is increasing. And if you see the series of reports, OECD report on climate finance have long been criticized, okay, for inflating climate finance figures by including funds or developmental projects. Even this OECD, which is including the developmental project finance, for example, health and as well as education, that is also included in this. And Oxfam report on climate finance discounts for climate relevance to reported funds to estimate how much climate finance is actually targeting climate action, and also even discounts for grant equivalents. So let me know what is the difference between the grant and as well as loan here. So there is a lot of difference between this grant and the loan. Let me know about the difference. If you don't know that, please let me know, and tomorrow's lecture we are going to discuss that. And even one more report, that is 2018's Biennial Assessment of UNFCCC Standing Committee on Finance report, which mainly says that average developed countries they provide only $26 billion per year as climate specific finance. Okay, and it mainly increased to especially in this 2017 to 2018, it is increased to just $36.2 billion. And if you're talking about broken promises, so US President Joe Biden recently said that the US will double its climate finance by 2024. But any claim that such a pledge will make US a leader in international climate finance, which is a misleading thing. So here US President said that they are going to double the climate financing, but this type of statements, it will be a misleading. because if you're talking about history of climate financing by US, so it came up with the broken commitments in our history, and it mainly promised that $3 billion it will be given to this green climate fund under President Barack Obama, but he delivered only $1 billion before our Trump sir withdraw US support from this GCF. After Trump came into picture, he come out of that actually. So climate finance has also remained skewed, that means it is a sudden diversion that we can see towards mitigation, as well as despite repeated calls for maintaining of balance between adaptation and mitigation. So now we went for sudden change or sudden shift towards adaptation as well as mitigation, now climate change. So in 2016 adaptation gap report, it mainly says that developing countries they could range from $140 to $300 billion annually by 2030 and raise to $500 billion by 2050. So this is the thing which mainly said in this 2016 adaptation gap report. So here finally author says that so developing countries, they need to get some finances from developed countries, especially to combat this COVID-19 pandemic and even climate change. So because of this climate change, now we are seeing there are some irreversible effects, especially in India. For example, rise in the sea level and as well as increasing glacial lakes, and even some disasters like earthquakes, landslides, etc. So because of this, not only this COVID-19 pandemic also played an important role actually in this climate financing. So I can say this is also one reason that might be contributed according to in my view. Okay, so these are some important things that you need to remember, and you need to focus on what is this climate financing and why it is important, and what is the need of this climate financing. In this perspective, so you can also think about it once. And now let us try to see next topic. It is about sowing better to eat better. So it is talking about mainly when we are going for better production, then we can fight against this malnutrition. So this is some central theme of this topic, and this topic will be important from our health, which mainly comes under GS paper 2. And if you are talking about this article which mainly focusing on this agri-food systems. So agri-food systems, we need some change such that we can go for better production. Okay, whenever we are having this better production, that will be helpful mainly to fight against this malnutrition. So if you're talking about context, so why it is in news? Because we are going to celebrate this World Food Day. So first let us try to talk about what is this World Food Day, and we are going to back this topic. So this World Food Day mainly marks the foundation day of our FAO, right? So here foundation day of this FAO, which mainly celebrated as this World Food Day. So FAO has enjoyed valuable partnership with India since it began operations in 1948. Right? So if you are talking about more recently, this FAO, which has been engaged in Indian government for mainstreaming agro biodiversity, and as well as it mainly focused on greening agriculture, promoting nutrition sensitive agriculture, and even strengthening of national food security. So FAO support for transformation of agri-food systems, it is mainly rooted in our agroecology as well. So now let us go back and let us try to see why we need to talk about this World Food Day. So if you're talking about health of our country's agri-food systems, which mainly determines the health of its people. So that means what the thing which we are producing, what the food we are consuming, that will be very important to determine the health of people of any geographical area. So if we're talking about findings of this fifth National Family Health Survey, which mainly says that nutrition status, which mainly worsen in number of states. So one reason might be here is due to this COVID-19 pandemic, there is no proper implementation of midday meals program. And this survey mainly covers about 17 states and 5 union territories. And these 17 states and 5 union territories comprise about 54% of Indian population. and they found that there is a role of micronutrient malnutrition. So here we have micronutrient malnutrition that is prevalent. So here, if you're talking about a multi-pronged approach, what can be done mainly to fight against this malnutrition? So we need to have a structural shift in our dietary patterns and as well as nutrition, etc. So the pathways for nutrition security, which mainly consist of improving dietary diversity and kitchen gardens, reducing of post-harvest losses, and we need to make a safety net programs, and we need to make our programs it should be nutrition sensitive, and we need to focus on this women empowerment and enforcement standards and regulations, and we need to improve water supply or drinking water supply. We need to focus on sanitation and solid waste management, nutrition education, etc. Apart from all these, we need to focus on, first of all, what is this importance of awareness. So how we can make aware about people regarding this nutrition, malnutrition, etc. So to address all these complex problems of malnutrition, we need to look at this agri-food systems. So we need to come up with a multi-pronged approach. So here, due to this COVID-19 pandemic on one side, which mainly exacerbated nutritious issues and as well as climate change and as well as challenging agriculture itself. So in this context, we need to focus especially on these challenges, and especially these are related to economic and as well as ecological sustainability, nutrition and adoption of new agriculture technologies, etc. So in this context, if you're talking about what is the food which is mainly produced in India, for example, we produce rice, we produce fiber containing foods, carbohydrate things, and oil containing foods or fat containing foods, etc. So these can be able to sustain 18% of world's population. So agriculture mainly contributes about 16.5% of our India's GDP, and it mainly employs 42.3% of workforce. And next one is, in this context, what is the need, what can be done? So first one is, we need long-term direction of agri-food systems, and not only enhance farm incomes, but even we need to ensure for the better access to safe and as well as nutritious food to people. And we need to minimize the cost on environment and as well as climate when we are going for agriculture. So here, this is the need which mainly recognized by the theme of World's Food Day 2021. It is our actions and our future and better production, better nutrition, better environment and better life. So this is about our theme in this World Food Day 2021. So if we're talking about some more important details, it mainly says that a suitable agri-food system, it is a one of which a variety of sufficient, nutritious and as well as safe foods, they are made available at an affordable price. So not only production, but we need to ensure that this produced food that will reach in the people at an affordable price in a safe hands. So we need to focus on let food should be wasted. So already we know that wastage of food is very much high in India. So we need to ensure that there is a less food is wasted, and food supply chain is more resilient to shocks. So food systems, they can help to combat environment degradation and as well as climate change as well. So we need to go for sustainable agri-food systems that can helpful mainly to come with this food security and as well as nutrition for all, and also it will be helpful without compromising economic, social and as well as environmental basis. So this is gist of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. It is about beginning base. So it is about to bring down inflation and as well as fuel consumption. So we need to cut fuel taxes such that we can control inflation, and as well as we need to increase this fuel consumption. So now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. So this topic, it is about yesterday's industrial output and retail inflation article. So if you're talking about context, why it is in news, because India's retail inflation that had been decreased, it is a 5-month low and it mainly stands at 4.35%. Now this India's retail inflation is about 4.35%, and it is mainly because of shortfall of food price inflation, and even industrial output growth mainly accelerated. So because of these two reasons, now we can see this retail inflation that is seen at a rate between 2 to 6%, that is 4.35%. So now let us try to talk about what is this retail inflation. So retail inflation means nothing but, in simple words, there is increasing of price of goods and services in market at retail prices. Retail prices means whenever consumers who is going to any shop and he will get a single product, that is called as retail price. So this retail price mainly measured by this consumer price index. So under this consumer price index, we can go for a measuring of this retail inflation. So this consumer price index, it is a measure. So this CPI mainly measures weightage of average prices of a basket of a consumer goods and services. So whatever the goods and whatever the services are present, and they are taken and they are mainly assessed for the price rise. For example, we can talk about transportation, food, medical care or medicines, etc. So if you are talking about this article, it mainly says that Index of Industrial Production IIP and as well as CPI Consumer Price Index figures mainly shows that here retail inflation that had been decreased, right? So here the target of RBI to maintain this inflation is 4% plus or minus 2%, that is about 2 to 6%. Now it is within its limits. So if we are talking about IIP, Index of Industrial Production, which mainly contains this mining, manufacturing, electricity, etc. So if you are talking about here, this article mainly focusing that yes, food prices that had been decreased, and now we need to focus on nutrition security of people. Okay, so here nutrition security of people is very important. So because of this, whatever the oil price or fat price that is increased, so we need to bring down that. And next one is, even in this transportation communication, there is an increasing of goods and services because of increasing of cost or prices of this petrol and diesel. So here this article mainly says that RBI and as well as government, they need to take proper steps to control this inflation, especially regarding this fuel. They need to decrease the taxes from both central government and as well as state government. So in this way, here that will be ensuring the price stability in our economy. So this is about gist of this topic, and I hope it is very clear now. So by this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. Thank you so much.